here we are again, aren't we? What are we going to talk about tonight?
I've got a question.
An easy one, I hope.
Well, I've got to read it actually.
Pardon? You've got to read it?
It's a bit complicated.
Oh, God.
Well, I mean, there are bits.
Never mind, Vinod's here. He will clarify it for us.
According to Ramana, most of our problems come from the illusion that I am the body idea. And he says, get rid of this false notion, know that you're the self, because all else is false. Well, I've struggled with this and find it quite impossible. And in many of us, in varying degrees, the body, the vehicle, is impaired or faulty, and appears to block the flow of light, or so it seems. You said last night we should allow the ebb and flow to happen. But during the ebb phase, it appears that the light withdraws and one is submerged in the malfunctioning vehicle, bereft of light, which is painful. Is the way through this dilemma to invoke the light into the malfunctioning alien form, thereby drawing it down into the malfunctioning earth, or is it to lie low, be unreactive, and wait till the tide flows in again? In other words, the active or the passive role.
Good blimey.
Sorry.
Do you mind reading that again? Can we have a précis?
That's the priesty.
Oh, that's a précis. All right. Ramana says all our troubles are our false identification of self with the physical vehicle. Is that right?
Well, it seems to me.
He definitely says that. But your observation is what?
Well, personally, I have tried and I can't do that. I mean, I find it quite impossible to rid myself of that notion that the body is an illusion. Well, the false image of it is. I mean, I agree in principle, but I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you seem to be saying something different, which I believe you do.
This is, of course, a very problematic question, which in one form or another will occur to all of us, probably has done. Now, there's no point in our context of trotting out approved formulae, the approved statement of affairs according to the Swamis, or those who know about Vedanta and so on. What we need, above all things, is the great exemplar, the one under whom one can write QED. And we can't quite say that about Ramana, because it was not demonstrated, the validity of his Sahaja Samadhi in the context of London, or the maelstrom of any of our mad cities, because our cities are mad, aren't they? The human race is crazy. Do you know, it's most extraordinary. I heard something on the radio the other day. You know, I greatly miss Dr. Chandra in a number of ways. We could engage in a question and answer interaction that sometimes would go on a very long time. When I used to have a telephone, my goodness me, that's why I had to get rid of the telephone. One reason why. It was no longer affordable. Partly because of Dr. Chandra. And he enjoyed a to and a fro, as you know. Now, I heard on the radio that this man who caused mayhem at a school in Dunblane it was said at the inquest that he was not insane, although he had a personality defect. Now, what on earth does all that mean? What is insane? What is a demonstration of insanity? What is a demonstration of the malfunctioning of human consciousness to an extreme degree that we call madness? Surely that was that. I mean, these experts, I find them most extraordinary people. We need to be able to test the validity of any thesis concerning a healthy state of the human psyche, let alone the revelatory state of the human psyche. We need to be able to test it in the maelstrom of the here and now, in the context, the circumstances that the majority of the population exist in. It's almost an impossibility to think of a transfer of a Mahatma like Ramana, plonk, into where? Hackney Council Flats. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe one of the questions would be, why does that not happen? And why does that not happen? What is the consciousness of a rishi, of a Mahatma? Fundamentally, no different from any other human consciousness. In kind, but may be very different in terms of degree. Every human being is a field of force. Everything is energy. All life is manifest energy. All organic life is manifest energy. We are organic life. Humanity is manifest energy, as is the earth we inhabit, as is the solar system, as is the universe of which all things are parts. Everything is the ebb and the flow of manifest energy. One thing that's true about the cosmos, one simple, basic thing, is the solar pattern. We know about the solar pattern in a fairly easy and obvious way, because we look at any simple book that talks about the planets, and there we have easily, clearly demonstrated the solar pattern. The sun is the centre, and all else goes round the sun. The sun is the centre of power, the centre of force, and everything else of necessity will be evolving around it. And one of the startling and amazing discoveries of the 20th century was the splitting of the atom and the revelation that the solar pattern exists in the tiny atom as well. Microcosm within macrocosm. Everything is reflecting the solar pattern. And in the ebb and flow of the energy that emanates and recedes throughout the universe, there is, it would appear, this movement around the centre. Now here is a great paradox, because when that is raised to the spiritual level, it's not a something that is manifest that is the power centre, but something that is not manifest. Our word sun is philologically linked with Surya, Vedic word, Surya, Su, cognate with Sva, which means celestial light, cognate with Su, which means light essence, or in another variation, essence or juice. From which we get our word soma, meaning essentially the blood power, the life force manifesting in the blood flow. That's a slight digression. In human consciousness, when a rishi appears, it is an inevitability that the environment that the rishi inhabits, consciously or unconsciously, and it may be unconsciously, it's usually somewhat on the conscious level, the environment goes into orbit around that power centre. It's inevitable. Side by side with that, we are obliged to think, and I'm convinced rightly obliged to think, in terms of the equality of all human beings. And consistent with that, this much misused and abused word, democracy. Freedom of thought, freedom of choice, freedom to make decisions, and freedom to do all the wrong things. One of the characteristics of the rishis, broadly speaking, is that we are given the freedom to do all the wrong things. Because although the rishis might explain, and do explain, and the prophets of all the ages have explained and do explain, give us the information, nothing eventually will teach as effectively as the experience that results from doing either the right thing or the wrong thing. We need that freedom, if you can call it freedom. Are we free if we do the wrong thing? But this is a mystery, isn't it? That we won't digress into at this moment. So, what would happen if a Ramana were somehow to inhabit our sort of lowly level venue? Not maybe a nice little house in the country, but or even in Hampstead, one of the leafy lanes there, with respectable neighbours. But that's not the whole of the question, of course, because the question would be, would he go to work in the local factory? Would he do the things required in the dynamics of the occupations that most people follow? What would happen if he did? Here we come to an interesting point. The Rishi, the Mahatma, everything will go into orbit around the Rishi. It's a very strange thing, I'm sure, but you can look at all sorts of instances in history, and it happens when the saint appears. Kingdoms topple. The realities of politics almost cease to apply. When the Rishi appears, everything will respond inevitably. Now, it will respond in one of two ways. It will respond negatively, or it will respond positively. But response is a certainty. If response is resisted, there will be psychological destabilization. And those in the environment will be swept along in the process of inevitable, automatic, subconscious response. Are you with me? Are you following what I'm saying? Are you? Take the extreme example. Take the avatar. An avatar is born. The first fact of the matter is that a beam of the sun has entered the earth. And that segment of the earth is thereby sanctified and changed. When the avatar is born, inevitably there is upheaval, disturbance. As we know from the story of Jesus, don't we, from the time of birth onwards. We know from the life of Jesus that he sought anonymity a great deal. Okay, you've been healed. Now keep quiet about it. Don't go around shouting about it, please. Knowing full well that his mere presence would cause the environment to go into orbit, and the existing orbits that had been the norm were now disturbed. People were thinking, acting, feeling in a different way. And when the avatar actually appears, humanity, those who encounter, are left with no choice except to acknowledge it and follow. That is, be in orbit creatively, or enter the counter orbit that fears the lights, that is distressed and disturbed by a power it cannot comprehend, and finds baffling and threatening and probably terrifying, awesome. This is clearly demonstrated in the life of the avatar Jesus, is it not? Clearly. The mere fact of being there meant the nation, that part of the world, the Roman Empire, the ancient world at large, would change. It's not a question of spreading sweetness and light, though that must be a major emphasis, the major emphasis. This is the meaning, surely, of one of those difficult sayings, I come not to bring peace but a sword. Knowing the impact of the power of the avatar, the encrusted consciousness of humankind would produce an explosion that would cause differentiation, rerouting, conflict and change. Absolutely inevitable. Now this, I'm personally convinced, is the fundamental reason why the rishis do not dwell among us. If they did, we could not cope with the power of their presence. We would be unconstructively disturbed if they entered our environment in a form, in a way, at a time that was not consistent with advantageous karmic circumstances. Are you with me? I repeat, every human being is a field of force, and a rishi is a field of force. Now, what would happen if, out of the karmic context, a Ramana were to enter our environments? There would be colossal action and reaction. In the process, the rishi would probably be physically annihilated, with terrible karmic consequences to the society that perpetrated that. Do you see? I'm sure that's the case. And if they come among us, if they do, which maybe they do from time to time, it is in a modified form. Bearing a barrier that modifies their power into something that we would find tolerable, or relatively so. Now, in the incarnation, in the incarnatory sense, this can take the form of a cloaking personality that has its limitations, like the personality of all of us. A cloaking personality. Which may well manifest genius or sainthood or extraordinary powers of leadership and wisdom. That's one way. Sometimes the rishis descend among us, heavily cloaked even from themselves. They undertake that veil upon their own understanding prior to incarnation. It's a tremendous sacrifice, I believe, so I've heard. It's significant that Vivekananda, who had extraordinary powers of penetration, interacted quite a bit with one of the great 19th century scholars who discovered the Vedas and translated the Vedic texts and made something of a sensation in the European world and the American world by revealing the masterworks of Indian spirituality. Right in the forefront was Professor Max Muller. But Max Muller had only examined texts. Very strangely, he'd never been to India. Vivekananda said to him, "You must not go to India." He said, "Why?" Because he intended to go to India. Vivekananda said, "You must not go to India because you are a reincarnation of an ancient rishi who has undertaken as a sacrifice the dharma of this work, bringing to the world some of the masterworks of ancient spirituality. If you go to India, you will come to places where you experience the shock of recognition and you will immediately die. Because you will then know who you are and what you are, and you will depart. Ramakrishna said of Vivekananda, there is a danger with Naran. He must not enter the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. If he does, he will realize who he is and go. Meaning, there has to be a veil over the understanding, cloaking the individual, for the protection of all concerned and for the fostering and continuation of the work. Do you see? Now, Ramana is speaking to us from a distance, a great distance, from up on the mountaintop. It's not a question of what is right and what is wrong. His truth is right. And we can, maybe in some degree, verify that fact. If we go deeply into meditation, it is a fact. It's very easy to get into the situation, the circumstances, that the body is of no consequence whatsoever. The external world is of no consequence whatsoever. We cannot be bound. Nature will say, now come on, old son, this is in the context of here and now. Nature will say, you've got a job to do. You can't do that. You have got to experience. You have got to know stress, conflict, suffering in some measure. And you have got to find the way through, the balance to strike, the effective pathway for humanity in the here and now. That is what nature will say to a true disciple in the here and now. Nature is not saying, go and find a guru. Go and follow the right and proper chap when he appears, or chapess. Nature is not saying, yippee, here's a good-looking chap in a yellow robe, he must be the right one, whoopee. Let's all do what he says. No, nature is saying something that has been said before, of course, many, many times. The Buddha himself said, be ye lamps unto yourselves. Which was another way of saying, be not dependent. Find your own light. And that's what any true teacher must say. Be your own light, your own way. Now your question, you see, raises this point. is it possible to know a state in which I'm not the slave of the physical, in which the body does not override my consciousness, in which I can let go of the physical and its aches and pains and its disturbed states? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Absolutely, yes, it is. And that is not invalid. But there is another aspect to the problem. And the problem is that when nature takes us by the scruff of the neck and says, go into the marketplace, go where all the madmen are, go into the factories, go into the places of commerce, go into all the work areas where there is the prevailing epidemic of nervous breakdown and goodness knows what else. It's a fact. Do you realise half the hospital beds in this country are occupied by people who are nuts, who've had a breakdown of some sort? Half. I'm sure it's nothing like that figure in France. Maybe only a third of the population's nuts in France. We all have a right to be nuts. Actually, it's a good thing to be nuts. In one way, it's the only healthy reaction to make to a situation which is imposing upon us values which are utterly and totally false. We live in an insane society. We do. The fact is, of course, we are a component of that society, therefore a contributor to that society. But one of the interesting things about very many mad people is that they will tell you that you're the mad one. They're not sane. They may think they're Napoleon, but they're right, they are Napoleon. Or latterly it's not Napoleon, there's a great crop of Jesus Christ, or various things. They are the ones who are sensible and sane, and if you don't hear these voices, or if you can't see these deluded conditions, then the fault is yours. And sometimes they can be exceedingly persuasive and get you to believe that there must be something wrong with you. Maybe they're right. It's particularly difficult for a child. Now, what am I saying then? We have to experience the disturbed state of society. Having experienced it, and we only experience it by becoming part of it, becoming overwhelmed by it, and needing to find a way through, a way out. Now we're talking in psychological terms now. But the fact is, we will never rectify the defects of our external, material, economic or political organization unless things are right here. Now, what this means is we have to acknowledge there is such a thing as the body. We have to acknowledge that the body must be strong. we have to acknowledge that there's a simple approach. Strength is good, weakness is bad. Health is good, illness is bad. We have to acknowledge that and act accordingly. It's only common sense. We have to acknowledge that every part of the human organism is entitled to develop an appropriate level of efficiency, intellectually. We have to acknowledge that we are feeling beings. We need to acknowledge that there are subtle areas of human development that need to be fed. The spirit needs to be fed. We need contact with the things of light. We need contact with the sources of inspiration. We need contact with what genius has provided by way of human culture to feed the spirit, to nourish the inner cravings, which mean we need the light. And having known Mozart, having known Shakespeare, etc., etc., in some degree, there is the strong possibility that we can know there is something beyond, because they express, in some measure, that something beyond. So, nature is demanding of us that we act, think, develop holistically. Is that inconsistent with the Raj Yoga standard Vedic approach, Vedantic approach? I am not the body, etc. Actually, it's not. It is possible to give due credibility to all the developmental needs of the total human being, and at the same time to know that we are not enclosed by matter. We are not slaves to the material. The great test is nearness to death. There are times when all of us are closer to death than we are to life. There are times when all of us are nearer to death than at other periods. Whenever we breathe out, we're nearer to death at any time than when we breathe in. We always die on the out-breath. If death holds no fear, then, in some measure, we are free. We're free of the oppression of the malfunctioning physical. We can let it go. An awful condition to be in, I would imagine, is to have an oppressive physical state and a fear of death. Maturity consists, in one measure, in being able to die. To be able to live means also being able to die. Conversely, being able to die means being able to live. In dying, it is said, we enter into eternal life. We need to look at ourselves, at our mental processes, at the reverberations to which every psyche is subject. And we need to be able to say, can I die to this? And if we can die to that, whatever it is, it cannot grip us. We may feel it, but it will not compel. And we are free of it. I don't suppose that has answered your question. But it's not an either or, you see.
Yeah, I think
And ultimately, I believe things do begin and end, especially in our time, with Ramana. I believe it's a good thing if yoga begins with the discovery, I am not the body. And the body does not matter. That's a good discovery. That's a major step forward. Nature will then say, in the context of our time, you're wrong, old son. You've got to do something else. You must become a whole being, acknowledging the physical, acknowledging life in all its aspects. Nature will demand that we do that, especially if we are disciples. But finally, we will come back to the realization that the physical cannot contain us. And if we get the shock of realization who or what we are, we will want to go. Toodaloo, ta-ta. Nothing's going to hold us. Yippee, off we go. I think these are realities that those, as they say, on the path have to negotiate. And no teacher, it seemed to me anyway, no teacher will teach us these things. Only nature is the teacher. So first, transcendence, Ramana. Second, down into the pit. There's no getting away from it. Yeah, I'm afraid it's an initiatory fact. That before you experience heaven, you must encounter hell. That's your test. If you survive it, if you go through it, blessed is he or she who has known the pit and does emerge, will emerge, so much wiser and stronger, more complete than if they merely go the way of renunciation. This is the meaning of all our aches and pains and our troubles. Our troubles are our benediction. Our problems are the source of what needs to be revealed to us. And we must take care that our privileges, our contentment, does not bind us into a cocoon that is unable to see what's over the wall in the rest of the earth, because we are part of that world, part of the suffering earth, part of the glory that is immanent in all evolving creation. Within every human being, there is a prodigious, organic fact. It's something I call the dancing angel. In varying degrees, it is a vital reality that is gradually descending into the human structure. As the human structure progressively is able to shed the barriers of irrelevance and toxic resistance that prevents the coming of our true states. So much depends on letting go and letting it happen, letting it flow, letting our consciousness be part of the flow. There are other aspects to all this, obviously, which we're not going into tonight, but which it's immensely important for the human race now to be able to appreciate. Immensely important. Time for tea.